All right, kids. Once again, it's howdy doody time, and my guest today is Jack of BAMK NUSD. Hello, Jack. How you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going, Mark? This is like the third or fourth time we're doing this, so
This is
good
the
to see
third
you.
time. Yes.
Yes.
So you are definitely one of my most popular guests, and I love having you because I find your brain very interesting, and you know I'm a fan. I love what you're doing with BAMK and NUSD. So let's just jump right into it. So you've made you basically released some new features, and you've also changed the basic character of NUSD. Previously a synthetic dollar, now a number up synthetic dollar. So why don't we start there? Tell us what the change to NUSD is.
Yeah, so one of the big breakthroughs for stablecoins, obviously, was just to keep it pegged to a dollar. But now there's significant yield that's been accumulated. And the community's been talking about how to distribute this yield. And that yield comes from the perpetual swap funding rate, which, as you see right now today, is a raging bull market. Bitcoin's approaching $100,000. You can see that people are able to access a lot of capital to borrow to try and go levered long. And what they're doing is they're paying a yield to take on levered positions on Bitcoin. So on Athena, I think on the Ethereum side, it reached something like 29%, and the official mark is 25%. So anyways, that we discussed on previous shows. Yeah.
Yeah. So the funding rate, so basically USDE, the Athena funding rate from people who are borrowing Ethereum in order to go long on the market, they have to pay the shorts for the privilege of using their ETH to go long. And right now, the funding rate is like approaching 30%. Holy shit. Okay. So that's yield for you and them. Yes.
Right. And to get to straight of it is whatever yield we capture for users, we just use it to denominate, to increase the denomination of NUSD. As in, it structurally is called a rebasement. So we've all heard about debasing the dollar against gold, but this is kind of like a rebasing higher. And so we did the first move of that kind. And so now one NUSD trades at 101 US dollars. Both to redeem, you would get, for every NUSD, you get 101. And if you want to mint more NUSD, you have to pay a 101 as well.
Yeah, so I've been calling it this a stable plus coin because you are creating basically a new reserve currency that's sort of dollar-like, but isn't really a dollar because it's not worth exactly a dollar at all times. You don't maintain a peg. However, you sort of do in a way because there's a stable bottom. So when you sort of re-released NUSD, it starts off being worth a dollar, and then because the funding rate you're collecting more backing for the NUSD in your treasury, that the valuation of NUSD is slowly creeping up. So effectively, every couple of weeks, it moves up a cent, and it can never dip below that line, right? Because it's always backed, right? So, so it's just steadily inching up. And the other thing to note here, and I just want to make sure I get this out because this is really important. You don't have to stake NUSD in order to accumulate this yield like you do in other similar systems where you're accumulating yield. So there is no taxable event, right? So normally if you're like receiving more coins in your wallet, that's income. So that's a taxable event. But that's not what's happening here. The NUSD is simply becoming worth steadily more in your wallet. So it's not a taxable event until you sell it. Now, I'm just going to preface this by saying I'm not a tax expert, but I think that's a pretty good understanding of what's going on here. Yes?
Right. And you brought note of the tax treatment because obviously I'm not American. But the other way I think about it, which is a different point, but it's just like the user traditionally, when you had like cashed bills, like $100 bill, you'd have to go deposit this $100 into the bank in order to earn interest on it. You couldn't earn interest while you were just using it in your wallet or at home in the mattress, so to speak. And then even when you did earn the interest at the bank, you would need to essentially get back the same $100 bill plus a bunch of other bills, like a $5 bill, a $1 bill, etc., like that. They weren't able to just increase the value of this same $100 bill. And so we thought, why not save the user both the need to go park it somewhere in crypto terms, like stake it in order to capture the yield? Because then you're kind of, which currency are you promoting? Are you promoting, because now even the staking part is tokenized as well. So when you stake the currency, you can actually get a staked version of essentially Athena, staked USDE.
Yeah.
And then they're both kind of circulating around the same amount. It gets confusing, like which one do you prioritize to get exchange listings? Which one do you want liquidity? Which one is the one that people are supposed to use? And so we just think that with yields so high, it's natural that you just want to share that with everyone involved. There's still a way for the platform to make money, whether it's a 20-80 split on the yield or whatnot. And so we thought every single holder of NUSD should benefit from the accrued yield, not just the people who stake. So that saves you the task of staking. And then the other part is, obviously we could have also just like airdropped the yield or something to all NUSD holders. It would still fulfill the priority number one, which is to benefit all NUSD players. But then because of the Bitcoin network fees, and also just like, I don't think a user wants to become an accountant or a treasury manager and try to deal with these rewards in yield every single week or month, and then list them and whatnot. So we just said, let's just make the number go up. And I think that opened up a lot of imagination space for the community and for our team, because now, we just happened to have started at 1 to 1 to the dollar. We could have also started at 20 cents to the dollar and then let it move up to 21 cents and 22 cents. But effectively, this is like the first actual Nakamoto dollar, actual Bitcoin dollar that is just like the euro in the European Union is not necessarily going to trade 1 to 1 with the US dollar. There are currencies like that, like Hong Kong dollars. It trades at in a very tight band, 7.78 to 7.85.
Yeah.
7.75 to 7.85 against the US dollar. But if the whole point is that the US dollar is failing on two fronts, it's a lacking technology, and it's a depreciating inflationary asset where cost of goods are always increasing in price. It might do better than other fiat currencies, but it's still a problem even in the US dollar in terms of cost of goods. Then why not solve both? So far, crypto has only solved one in terms of like, okay, there's a USDT and a USDC. That does not solve that. But you see, even today or yesterday, Brian Armstrong announced that maybe it's part of the Trump administration making this a little bit more regulatory friendly, but Coinbase announced that you can now hold your USDC on chain and they would still credit you with a 4.75% yield on the USDC, which is a big change from before. You had to essentially park the USDC in one of their earned products on their platform. Now you can have it on chain. So the world is shifting towards there. And I think I like the balance of, well, why even count this 4.75 versus 2.2 or 7.8? Like, let the user just use the currency. And if there's yield accrued, that one NUSD could now buy more things. But, with inflation, it might just end up buying the same amount of things. So what I like to see is like, if people have all that comparison, like whatever 1 ounce of gold could buy a suit or something, and now 1 ounce of gold still can buy a suit like 50 years later. That'd be nice to have that with NUSD to be on the side of deflationary, if not at best, but at worst, kind of keeping track with the prices of goods.
Yeah. So basically, I call what you have done with NUSD in coin yield. So it's just, inside the coin, the yield is accumulating. The consumer has to do nothing. And I think from sort of a consumer product perspective, you've greatly simplified the idea of collecting yield in a brilliant way that I've not seen anyone else do. And you just basically got rid of all the yield tokens and the stake tokens. That's just nonsense. Like Joe 386 pack isn't going to think like that, right? So you've greatly simplified that. And just so everyone understands, like over time, NUSD, because it's creeping up a penny every couple of weeks, not exactly, but something like that. That's sort of the rate that I've observed so far. It's eventually going to be worth $2 and then $3 and then $4. right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the progression of things. So
yeah, and the risk of the Athena yield or perpetual yield may lead to depegging, but it might be depegging from 1.8 and it goes down to 1.7 or something. It's not this exact depegging from $1 down to 95 cents or something like that every time.
Yeah, right. Because the yield can go negative, but
the yield can go negative, and then we don't have enough reserves to keep the latest rebasement, and then it would debase.
Then you will debase. Yeah,
you will debase. Yeah. So nothing about like kind of capturing the yield within the dollar changes the risk profile of the source of the yield. That is still there, but essentially like.
With normal stable coins, if they depeg, they're dead, right?
They're
so
dead,
if you uncouple from $1 for like a couple days, all of a sudden everyone panics and you're gone. All of a sudden you're Luna, right? It now doesn't have that risk. Right?
No. It can go from $1.92 to like $1.86 or something else. But I think there'll be less panic because obviously people that are interested in this product are not the ones looking for exactly 1-to-1 to the dollar to begin with. They're getting a dollar that is going higher most of the time and some tail risk of it going lower. But it's just really, it doesn't add to the risk either. So whatever risk Athena had is still the same risk as well.
Yeah, it's like a stable coin sort of with a bunch of buffer zones around it, which I think make it a lot safer than kind of, the other stable coins like USDC and Tether. There's fiat sitting in a bank account somewhere. And if that bank goes under, as we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, right, a lot of USDC's fiat backing was in that bank, and USDC depegged severely for temporarily, but people got scared. We didn't know whether Silicon Valley Bank was going to get bailed out or not. And if they didn't, then USDC would have been dead. Hash Rate is sponsored by Ledger. With the announcement of Ledger Flex and Ledger Stacks, Ledger gives you the best security on the planet for your crypto and identity. Ledger Flex and Stacks drive an e-ink screen with the same secure chip that's in your credit card and passport. Except, instead of protecting the secrets of banks and governments, Ledger protects your secrets and your private keys. Ledger supports Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and more than 200 other tokens. The secure touchscreen, plus the Ledger Live app, means that whether you're buying your very first Bitcoin or doing your 2000 swap, you can do it securely and easily with your Ledger. And as always, use my link, shop.ledger.com/hashrate in the show notes to get the very best price whenever you buy a Ledger Flex or Stacks.
Yeah, and then the other thing that people make note of is like, especially like last week or so when Trump won the election, there was like an all-time high, right? And you had all these people drawing charts, and they were like, well, inflation adjusted, the 69,400 high of 2021 is actually 73,000 or 74,000. So we technically, some bearish people were like, technically there's no all-time high breached until we overtake $74,000, something like that. So now like you have a new way to price Bitcoin in I call it N, or short for NUSD. So, today, we're 1% over 100K would be when it reaches 100,000 N, right? But by the time, let's say in the future, there's a retracement from 400,000, the high, back down to 100,000, etc. You can then measure this in N, which is tracking like a true break. There's some benefits of like pricing goods. That would be the ultimate win. If you think about like sort of the Bitcoin fork wars and things like that, the ticker was very, very important in terms of like getting the mainstream people to believe which one is the real Bitcoin, right? Like it's called BTC. We're going to say that's Bitcoin. That's what everyone thinks. So if you want to be the stable coin of Bitcoin, then you want as many things, at least on Bitcoin, to be priced in or mentally thought of in that end. And that's a risky move that we've taken because obviously people already think in dollars. Why not keep it to dollars? Then they'll naturally price it in your stable coin. But by detaching it, we're definitely taking a risk. But if we can still get people to think in terms of N, then we will be the only coin that behaves that way So then every other coin will not become like the default stable coin. So I think it's a differentiating point. It's a risk, but it's also becomes a winner take all if we can make that stick.
It's a risk, but it's kind of an awesome risk. And the more I think about this idea, the more I fall in love with it personally, because you're not completely detached from the dollar psychologically, because you know in your mind like N is going to be somewhere around $1, right? Like it's not going to suddenly be $100 or $1,000 or $0. So it's got like all these shock absorbers, sort of in the neighborhood of $1. And
even when it's $1.50, then it's like it's the neighborhood of $1.50. It's the neighborhood of $1.60. It kind of moves. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
And I think that, and that's from a branding perspective and an adoption perspective. I think that's extremely important. I know that I brought up Ohm in the past because that's something just I'm familiar with. Ohm also tried to create a new reserve currency, but you couldn't think in Ohm because you just didn't know what it was worth, and it moved around wildly all the time, right? So yours is far more consistent and is conceptually adjacent to $1. And I really, really like that. And I think it's really important. I think it's got a shot at succeeding partly because of that alone. So,
and it kind of moves with the Bitcoin cycle. So when Bitcoin is going way high in a bull market, this dollar kind of rebases a bit faster. When Bitcoin is retracing, it doesn't really rebase much. So it's the one that like goes with Bitcoin the best, I think.
Yeah. It's like a gear that like it's like there's a clutch on it that sort of moves in and out, but it is related. It's basically its energy is coming from Bitcoin. So what about, is it backed at the moment by Bitcoin, or are you still basically backed by USDE, Athena, and an Athena based delta neutral position?
Yeah, it's still best backed by SUSDE.
Okay,
I think,
I just want to make sure that's clear. But the intent is to, in the future, move it to just pure Bitcoin?
It'll be pure like Bitcoin delta neutral positions. Yes. We would still not back it by the volatility of Bitcoin. That's the idea.
So it'd be delta neutral, and you'd be in a perp deck somewhere with something the funding yield.
Yes.
So my understanding
there's a world where it could go to like a maker model where people like collateralize Bitcoin and then like get margin called under Bitcoin. That's possible. The way that we likely will do it, again, this is our internal thinking that I've never shared with anyone else, but we would make probably a peer-to-peer loan market rather than peer-to-protocol loan market. What that means is like the whole backing is still the Athena or maybe a Bitcoin perps if we move to that. But then if some people would like to mint NUSD with the normal backing that we have, but then accept other people's like loans of Bitcoin in order to give them NUSD, there could be like a peer-to-peer kind of like a loan market for with Bitcoin and NUSD on top of like our base structure. That way, if we are slow to margin call or something goes wrong with that, only the people's like the peer-to-peer people on top, their NUSDs would get like a shortfall or something went wrong there, not the base kind of entire NUSD. That's how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, no, that's clever. And I think your timing is really interesting. I think you and I disagree on the importance of timing for the differentiator between a project succeeding or not. I do like your kamikaze, brave, locus of control is fully within me attitude. I think that's a right one for an entrepreneur to have. I'm sort of outside of it looking, historically at things. Yep. And historically, the timing does seem to be more important in my mind.
For sure.
I think there's merit to both ways of thinking, but I'm just going to talk about the timing part of it for right now. The timing does appear to be right for this kind of a product. We're seeing Hermetica, we're seeing Ruggiero doing a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. We don't know all the details of that, but we it's basically a Thorchain lending thing. Lendasat, Lava XYZ, Ducat. I'm just seeing like a new one of these things pop up on my radar every day where the idea is a stable coin detached fully from the fiat banking industry, backed by Bitcoin, some cases in the Bitcoin ecosystem, sometimes not. And just so people are clear, N is a rune at the moment only, correct? So on pure Bitcoin. So it's not like you can go to Ethereum and get N. doesn't exist. You have to be on Bitcoin. So any plans to change that, or do you feel like that's the place to bet?
No, I think when we were a little bit more lost on sort of what would grow this thing, the temptation is, it didn't grow on Bitcoin. Let's see if it grows on Fractal. Let's see if it grows on some other protocol, or Solana. But we just think that was a lack of clarity of what we should do, because the reality is like it should grow on Bitcoin itself. And so you should see the TVL at much higher levels before you need to go on another chain. Otherwise, you're going to end up with low TVL on the other chains also, in my opinion. So we wanted to get the flywheel going. And so we have touched already today on this number go up part, which makes the benefits of holding NUSD much more easy to understand from a holder's perspective. But the other big two breakthroughs is that we think liquidity is very important, specifically on-chain liquidity. Obviously, if you think about like where we stand versus any of these stable coins you just listed on Bitcoin, all of us can call Binance and call Gate and be like, hey, you should list our stable coin. We can all do that. So that's not really a differentiator. Obviously, if one was able to get on Binance, the other ones could not, then that is a differentiator. But we think that we're all kind of stuck in this $1, $2 million, $3 million TVL range. And the temptation is just keep on using like some kind of incentives, airdrop this, points that, give people BAMK, other people. Like on that front, I think we've already been leading everyone in terms of like how much we're giving out in incentives. But we think that this is an actual product with utility of its own. Like, so then that utility has to be being used as a base pair for, we think, trading Bitcoin and Bitcoin assets. And to that end, I think our team's background in exchanges, both centralized and decentralized, our team's background having built OrSwap as like the first marketplace for Bitcoin ordinals and things like that, lends really well to us kind of making NUSD more liquid. And because we can all approach Saturn or Magic Eden Swap again and try and do this again. But like you said, originally with Tether, they had this Bitfinex and Tether combination so that you get it going on your in-house exchange before you can convince some other external exchanges to take you very, very seriously. So currently the TVL has been stuck at like, 1.5 million, 2 million, 3 million. I think it peaked at 5 million. It's been coming down. Even though our policies haven't changed, right? So it's not like we've reneged on BAMK rewards or whatever, but you can clearly see that like this thing is too tied to the BAMK token being worth a lot. And right now it's not worth a lot. And so we think that, so that's what led us to build this swap, which has been talked about for months, but now you've experienced it, is actually live. And it's a two-way swap with BTC, which I think is really interesting. So on one hand, it's like we're detached from the banking system, but a lot of other people, they're detached from the banking system, but yet they still try and accept wires or stable coins to mint this token. We think it's most natural to accept BTC for the minting and redeeming of the tokens, given that it sits as a rune on BTC, and now BTC is like a $2 trillion asset. So we got $2 trillion asset that with our technology can be atomically swapped, right? Because if you, again, make your stable coin as a Botanics coin or a Stacks coin or whatever these other layer 2 solutions are, then you lost the ability to swap with layer 1 BTC. Yes. So by staying as a rune, we actually did make an atomic swap. So now what happens is we are going to use the 101 rate for US dollars, but what you're actually doing is you're getting a 1% discount on your BTC using like the current prevailing rate for BTC. So like if BTC is trading at 100,000 per BTC, when you redeem your NUSD, you would get 101,000 worth of Bitcoins. You'd get like 1.01 BTC essentially on the redeemer. And likewise, to mint one, if BTC is 100K, you have to actually pay 1.01 BTC. And then this is like an atomic swap, which has been used. I know there's like a bot out there called NUSD underscore alerts, and it's tracking. And and we've never seen activity like that before. We've never seen like small amounts like 500, 1,000 be able to come in and out of the ecosystem. So that's like a big thing. And then I'll pause there, and then we'll talk about the auction stuff.
Yeah, because I want to just recapitulate what you said, so it's very very clear to everyone. So if you want to get some NUSD, the way you do it is you go to BAMK.fi and you bring along some Bitcoin on the Bitcoin chain. You connect to the site with an Xverse wallet, a Unisat wallet, or what's the other one? OKX. So all those three wallets are supported, and they're Bitcoin native wallets. You connect. You basically can swap your Bitcoin for NUSD, and the NUSD at the moment costs $1.01 worth of Bitcoin per NUSD. And then the other direction, you can come back later and you can redeem your NUSD, which may have gone up to like, $1.02 or $1.03 or whatever it is. And you come back and you redeem it for that amount of raw Bitcoin. And in both cases, you remain entirely on the Bitcoin chain. You never leave and go to a layer 2. It's just raw Bitcoin stuff, runes in and out, Bitcoin in and out, and that's it. So the price is enforced because of NUSD. The NUSD price is enforced because it is always redeemable at the current quoted price for raw, pure, native Bitcoin. So huge, dude. I love that. And I agree. That is pretty big.
Yeah, we turned it on its head. So our reserves are delta neutral positions on Athena or in the future on Bitcoin. But our payment rails are actually raw Bitcoin itself. Yeah. And the way we do that is we just keep like 1 or 2% of the reserves in Bitcoin itself. We're not trying to make it back. We're not making a bet on the price of Bitcoin. But this way, you get the most native currency you could want on Bitcoin for the stablecoin. So we really truly treat the NUSD as a secondary currency on this chain. We think of Bitcoin as the primary currency because we are Bitcoiners. We are on-chain people that own a lot of assets, trade assets on-chain. We don't come here from a TradFi perspective saying, you guys don't want Bitcoin. Bitcoin's risky. It could go down. Hey, use my TradFi stablecoin. We are here to be like the dollar for Bitcoiners. And I think that position is really good. And if people can try this with one of their on-chain wallets, they will see that in the TXID, you will see both the NUSD in the transaction and the raw Bitcoin in the very same transaction as different inputs and outputs. So you can see there's some cool tech going on here. It's not like those archaic swappers where you deposit your Bitcoin and like 10 minutes later it confirms and then like we send you some other thing. Like if you actually think about the market structure, right? Currently, BTC is a $2 trillion asset and Tether and USDC are a combined $150 billion asset, if not something more, maybe 160, 170. But what happens is these two assets sit on different chains. The BTC asset sits on the BTC chain, and the USDT and USDC sit on basically every chain that's not BTC. They sit on Ethereum, Tron, Solana, etc. Yeah. So then the only way to trade it is to bring in another chain or trading environment which you call like Binance, or you call it Coinbase, or you call it like some other venue. And it's like the BTC holder has to go deposit the BTC to Binance. The USDT holder has to deposit their USDT from Tron or Ethereum to Binance. And then the user does KYC on Binance and then swaps it and then re-withdraws. So this process is really bad. Now, that doesn't mean that people are going to prefer our method right away, and we'll get to that in a second. But in terms of this raw transaction of both the stable coin, not just being backed by Bitcoin, not just like generating yield, the fact that this token, whether it had yield or not, the fact that it sits on Bitcoin and that the governing kind of protocol allows this to be atomically swapped in and out with Bitcoin, that in itself, regardless of yield, regardless of all this other stuff, is like the first of its kind.
That is a big deal. I agree. That's underestimated, I think. I think people just don't get the importance of that necessarily. Hopefully they will after this pod, but that actually, when you do it and you feel it in your bones, it's like one of those things where you're like, oh, that is really interesting, right? It's like the first time you used Uniswap and you went, oh fuck, you can do this. This is amazing, right? It is one of those feelings.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so then it becomes like, okay, well, the reason why I do like having tethers on Binance is because when I do have tether on Binance, I now can trade 100 different things from different chains on Binance. Whether it's Solana, I can trade BTC, Ethereum. They're listing new coins like Ordi, like whatever else they've been listing. And so there's like a lot of liquidity inside of Binance, right? But so this is another, another guess.
I know where you want to go, so I just want to set it up a little bit because I want to repeat something I said in a previous show, but just to make sure we're all on the same page. So I was around in the early days when Tether was first invented, and Brock Pierce and some other people were involved with it. And they told me about it, and I heard about it, and it was very, very, very small. It was not a big deal at all. It was kind of nowhere for like, I remember it being like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, maybe longer. And it just, nobody got, I didn't get what it was for. I was like, this is dumb. Like, I want Bitcoin. I don't want, why do I want $1? If I want a dollar coin, why don't I just get $1 in a bank? Right. Like, I just didn't understand it because there was no use case for it. There was no killer app. It was kind of like in the early days of the microcomputer. A lot of the ads were like, well, mom can store her recipes on it. Nobody knew what the fuck it was for. Right. Although we just sort of sensed there was something big here. And it wasn't until all of a sudden the overseas exchanges supported Tether as the lingua franca, as the base pair for all the other exotic coins that you really wanted to buy. You had to have Tether in order to go, and that was the Chuck E. Cheese token they accepted, right? So all of a sudden there was huge demand for it. So now now you're in the same position. You need to create demand for your Chuck E. Cheese token, for your NUSD, which is brilliant unto itself, but it needs a place to be spent, right? In order for people to really feel it and start using it and appreciate all the other aspects of it, I think, to their full extent. So you have come up with a plan to do this. So let's talk. So you talked a little bit about it earlier. You've started these auctions and you're going to do a full exchange against runes and anything else, or is it just runes?
Yeah, it's going to be all runes to start. But essentially, in traditional markets, there's something called auctions. It typically happens after the markets close. So during the daytime, you can trade on a traditional stock exchange. And then at the end of the day at 4:30, there's like a closing auction. There's also a opening auction, I think. And what happens is, like, if you own a stock, you put your stock into the auction. If you don't have dollars, put your dollars into the auction. And there's one clearing price for the auction. And using that price, everyone gets their ratio. So there's not one single winner. Everyone's a winner essentially, but you get all the same price. So one of the problems with runes is that a lot of the tail runes, especially for the seller, is very illiquid because most of these marketplaces are only allows the seller to list a price. There's no bids. Okay, so if I'm holding on to a lot of runes like Dog Go to Moon, or especially even smaller runes that are just like $2 million market cap, $3 million market cap, and I really want to get rid of my entire bag. Let's say I have 5% of the whole supply. There's just no way for me to know what I should list it at Magic Eden to guarantee myself by 4 p.m. I will be getting money for this.
Yeah, it's not like normal coins where you can just go to Binance and sell them all at once and you get a big pile. And you know what the price is and you get it like more or less immediately. Can't do that with runes. Just doesn't exist because you have to put it in little parcels and put them up for sale like a yard sale, right?
and when you try to establish a currency, once again, we could trade Doggo to the moon against NUSD, but again, that's available on some of these other exchanges. That's available. That's pretty liquid. So you need to find an edge where your currency is the preferred currency for some subset of the market. It doesn't matter how small, really. And so we think that market will be in long tail runes, in runes financing. So some people can use the auction for a newly minted rune. They might have pre-mined the entire supply, but they want to put it into the auction over one auction or 10 auctions. And effectively, you've allowed anyone to do the EOS sale, right?
Yeah.
with their
EOS, because this is exactly what
yes.
this reminded me of when I first heard you talking about it. For those who don't know, EOS, the blockchain EOS, did this style of an auction, but they did it basically every day. They had an auction for a year that worked this way, where they, the dollars, or I guess it was just in Ethereum. I think Ethereum went in, and then the amount of EOS that was up for sale, was constant every day. So we knew what that was. But if you were the only bidder, right, and you bid $1, you got the whole thing for $1. And of course you wouldn't be. What really happened was, as the clock started ticking down towards midnight, the end of the auction, all these new bidders piled in, right? Especially if it was low, right? Which would drive the price up high. And so by the time midnight hit, you found out what you ended up with for a price, and you didn't know until the auction ended. And the end result was the most successful ICO out of all of them. They raised $4 billion.
Yeah.
I thought this wasn't going to work. I just didn't like the psychology of it. I was completely wrong, because this worked amazingly well. Now, the EOS blockchain, not so much, but EOS, the ICO, the massive success, undeniably so.
Yeah. And so the currency that people are going to be bidding in these auctions are going to be NUSD. And so you're going to have to get NUSD to get into this auction. Now, the funny thing is, we're thinking, like, if the auction makes more sense with BTC, let's not force people to use NUSD. So, like, we just took a step back and be like, very humbly, like, hey, look, is there actually a role for NUSD involved here? And we like to say yes, because some of these auctions might take a week. It might be 1,000 blocks long. Like, it may not be all very short. And as a person who's selling the rune, they might be wanting to sell because they want dollars. They want dollar-like stability. They don't want maybe Bitcoin, because they might end up selling the rune that's going to go down 20%. That's why they're selling. But then they ended up waiting a week to receive Bitcoin that's also down like 14% in that week. So it makes sense to do NUSD. But we came up with a pretty clever way, because earlier in the conversation I said we have this Bitcoin NUSD atomic swap that happens in one transaction. What this allows us to do is that the bidder of the auction can type in, I want to bid 1,000 NUSD, put 1,000 NUSD into the auction. Yet this user has no NUSD in their Xverse or Unisat wallet. They just have a bunch of BTC. When they say bid, the thing automatically pops up and says, okay, you're about to pay 0.01 BTC. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, they pay in Bitcoin. Yeah. Even though the actual bid is denominated in NUSD.
Yeah. And it's going to land immediately. It's going to land immediately as NUSD. So it opens up the auctions to the entire 2 trillion Bitcoin market.
Yes.
That's super interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
because if you look at the stats, right, I say only with a grain of salt, but only $50 billion worth of Bitcoin are actually sitting on Binance. And maybe it's like 30, 40 billion of Bitcoin are sitting on Coinbase. And then once you go down to like OKX, it's down to like 12 billion or something like this. Mm-hmm. And so then that means most of the Bitcoins are sitting off exchange, in cold storage, whatever else. Well, if your coins are in cold storage, it is one move to put it into a Unisat wallet or Xverse wallet. It is 2 moves to move it into a Binance exchange, wait for confirmations, etc. So technically, any cold storage coin can be brought online and swapped to NUSD without waiting for confirmations. You see, you just load your private key and then press the button. So when people talk about the whole fight between centralized exchanges, is they're trying to play a game of like, we offer the best exchange, but we also need to capture your holdings. Like, we need to move your holdings into my exchange in order to have a lot of liquidity. The benefit of all these things happening on chain, like NUSD being on chain, Atomic Swap on chain, and all these wallets being like an on chain wallet, is that we actually get access to a pool of Bitcoin that's actually larger than all exchange holdings of Bitcoin combined, much, much larger. So then the question really becomes, does the Bitcoin network at layer 1 work efficiently enough fee wise and transaction volume wise to make this something that people prefer doing versus doing that. And I realized that the answer to that is not necessarily like, okay, the chain's not scalable enough, transaction fees are too high, it only works when the chain's quiet. It actually, the other benefit is that on this chain, there is a range of assets that you can potentially want to trade that is actually even wider than the range of assets that you can find inside of Binance, inside these other exchanges. Because if you have on-chain Bitcoin, you could go inscribe any rune you want. You can go trade any number of, I think at this point, hundreds of thousands of runes. Whereas on Binance, we're still waiting for them to list the first rune.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So this is the bull case, is that can we become a used currency inside of the runes ecosystem? It seems hard because Bitcoin is already very stable compared to these runes. So why would you use a stable coin, right? Yeah. There's a little bit of that thinking. But where this is really going to go is we just have to keep on working on this and stay number one in terms of NUSD and work on getting this used, right? I think our season 1, we promoted people just holding NUSD in any wallet. You get extra BAM, you get all this perks season 1. But I think season 2 and whatever we do going forward is going to promote people actually using the NUSD, whether it's in auctions or whatnot. Because I think the bull case is that you could imagine some credit card issuer, whether it's like a crypto card or some kind of like fintech company, they may allow you to log in with Xverse or log in with Unisat and allow you to just spend your runes, including NUSD, and allow you to spend your BTC. Once something like that exists, or a service that allows you to wire funds from your Xverse wallet to your bank account. Again, we won't be the makers of that, but you've seen companies like Bridge just sold to Stripe. Something like that accepts a login with Bitcoin wallet. Like the same way some credit cards now allow you to log in with like Phantom or MetaMask. But you see that for Bitcoin. Now it's very interesting because now I can just live on chain with my Xverse or Unisat account. I don't actually need another account for Ethereum or Solana. And then I have a credit card or a wiring system, a neobank, a Bitcoin neobank. And then that way I can just sit in NUSD for my spending. That's what you're going to see happen, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, I mean, I think this is, so in a way, this is a bet on the expanding health, sort of extended Bitcoin is how I think of runes and BRC20s. But I think runes, a lot of people are like, runes are dead. I don't think they're dead at all. I think the entire extended Bitcoin universe, as Bitcoin itself grows, will surge and become greatly important over the next few years, which means there will be a bunch of other services building what you just described on top of things like Unisat and runes. That would be spectacular to have a credit card that just plugs right into my runes, where I could spend my NUSD at the grocery store. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, people want us to make those BD deals. I think when it comes to on-chain liquidity, we might have to, but when it comes to this, like kind of a credit card that comes to Bitcoin, they're excited not because of NUSD. They're excited to tap into all of Bitcoin and that on-chain wallet universe, which would be really good. And I think I agree with you on the runes part. So I think if you look at what happened when Ordinals came out, at first, this stuff was inscribed for free. So it was eating into this massive amount of liquidity that's Bitcoin. And so runes, or at least BRC20s and Ordinals, outperformed Bitcoin for a long time in 2023. Yeah. And then going into the ETF, people were like, how do I get exposure to this like Bitcoin? Because the Bitcoin ETF is not going to hold runes, or it's not going to hold BRC20s. Right. So then there was a snapback, like a bear market for ordinals and runes. And I say this like a storyteller. It's not like I manage my own portfolio very well through all this. But like looking back, this is more obvious. It's like, okay, BTC is the one that's going to outperform in 2024. And your way to outperform that was to buy things like MicroStrategy or MetaPlanet because they would be rewarded for being able to stack Bitcoin faster, and you can get exposure to some kind of premium on that share price versus like buying an ETF or buying BTC itself.
Yeah.
And then what will happen is, now that maybe the premium is too high and people want to rotate back into base Bitcoin, you're going to see some capital sell the shares that are in MicroStrategy and then get back to Bitcoin. But now they're going to want to outperform Bitcoin still, so they might go back to runes. So this is like the pendulum that keeps on swinging back and forth, with the caveat that Bitcoin itself does overall better. But people always look for leverage, basically.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I think, right now, at this moment, it's very clearly, it's no longer boring coin anymore. I used to call it boring coin for a couple of years. Now it's Bitcoin again, and it is Bitcoin season. And, the other stuff, some of it's moving, but none of it's moving like Bitcoin is. And that's probably going to be the case for a while. And I think when Ordi, I remember the period of time where I first noticed you actually was during the entire Ordi, the birth of Ordi, and then the Ordi run up. And in that period of history, I'm going to go back to timing for a moment. Nothing else was going on. Like, the world was boring as fuck. Right? And all of crypto across the board, right?
Yeah.
So when BRC20s were born and the first BRC20 Ordi was born, not only was it just sort of an interesting development on its own, but it happened in this vacuum of there being anything interesting going on in crypto at all anywhere. So, the spotlight, when it shone on it, it was like 9 times as bright as it might have been if there was activity on Solana or something else distracting everyone, right? So it was born in a good time. So we think, like, as we've learned through making the coin, that okay, just because it's on Bitcoin doesn't mean people are going to pile into it. Just because you give them like a number go up yield doesn't mean people are going to pile into it. People need liquidity, and then people ultimately want to be able to use the coin to access products that might go up even more than Bitcoin. Because we're in a bull market, or even when we're not in a bull market, some of the earliest adopters, why meme coins go up on Pump Fund, is because for a split second, for the next 1 second, my best chance to be up 10x is on a meme coin on Pump Fund. Yeah. Even though I absolutely know that like Bitcoin is a more better asset, blah, blah, blah. And so if you sit there with a stable coin saying, hey, we offer 1% a month or whatever, to the TradFi people, they're screaming, this is a Ponzi scheme, there's no way that's sustainable, blah, blah, blah. But to the on-chain person, they're like, I can't care about 1% a month. I need to go care about the newest inscription, newest rune I can get. And so it's very important that NUSD is not the destination. NUSD is a tool to get to destinations that you want. And it remains to be seen if we can establish that kind of utility. And I'm not sure if number go up makes it harder or easier to make that happen. But I do think we have the right team that with the right background that's made marketplaces that will give this a good attempt. Yeah, well, I do like the idea of being able to, if I'm a rune inscriber and seller, an accumulator and seller, I probably do want to sell to NUSD. Especially, obviously, like not this second because Bitcoin's going up like crazy. So I prefer Bitcoin today. But, in 6 months when it all sort of calms down and mellows out, and maybe even dives a little bit, as, Bitcoin likes to do sometimes. We all, in moments like this, we all forget that it went from like 70K all the way back down to 17 again. So, it can happen, and it'll happen again, even with Bitcoin, I think.
And another big change I think we made is we're going to take the deferred BAMK and make it liquid. We're currently working on that airdrop, because I think if you really take a step back at like what the user of NUSD has gotten so far, they've actually only gotten 1% this entire time, like 4, 5, 6 months.
Of BAMK, you mean, or are you talking about just yield?
The yield. The number go up has only been 1%. Everything else in terms of BAMK has not hit their wallet. So from their perspective, it's like I can quantify how much gains I've missed not buying Bitcoin or buying Ethereum instead, because I'll be liquid on those gains. Yeah. You telling me I've made 200% APY, but I haven't received it. So if I really need the money, I can only get 101 for my NUSD so far. I'll have some deferred BAMK I get later, but like that's not it's very hard to determine, do I rather have 12%, 25% real versus 200% not real? I haven't received my BAMK. I don't know what the BAMK price will be when I and everyone else receive the BAMK. So is it actually 200% or is it 12% or is it 28%? And so that is the other part of the value proposition that has been like, on paper, looks great. In practice, has not led to a significant demand for NUSD. And then I think part of it is like just like you have to explain like, why is Athena being adopted so successfully and NUSD is not? Because in essence, it's the same product, right? And the answer to that is probably they've gotten better inroads with centralized exchanges, and there's better tooling in Ethereum-based DeFi products. I think in Bitcoin, people are still waiting for the swaps, still waiting for Arch, still waiting for OpNet, still waiting for all kinds of stuff. So, but yeah, I think we will be patient, but it's important that we try and make this work as soon as possible, to be honest.
Yeah, just before we leave BAMK for a second. So so at the moment, if I hold NUSD in my wallet, I'm getting the in-coin yield that we've been discussing all show. But in addition to that, I also get BAMK tokens, correct?
That's right.
And are those, how often are those distributed to me?
They haven't been distributed at all yet because it was supposed to be on a 41,000 block delay. And I think we're maybe like 25,000 blocks in on that. Yeah,
okay. So I wasn't sure if that got changed to immediate distribution.
Yeah, we are changing that to immediate. So we're trying to index the leaderboard, et cetera, make it accurate. And then we will give a distribution of the entire earned BAMK so far.
Oh, so everything is going to, I didn't know that. So basically all earned to date will go out?
Yeah, we were debating on, all earned to date will go out, yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. I look forward to that then.
Yep. Okay. And so.
Yeah. Well, where I was going to get, unless you have a thought, I was going to say,
go ahead.
I was, Eric Voorhees was on this show like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. You got some great guests.
Yeah. So, I mean, thank you very much. Yeah. Voorhees is a fantastic guest, as are you. But Voorhees about a week ago tweeted out, hey, so who's working on, a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin completely detached from the fiat banking system? And he said, go. And a lot of people said BAMK NUSD, including me. I made sure he knew about it and posted that you saw what I posted about, when you switched over when you basically came up with this new plan for NUSD, I did a tweet storm about it, and I made sure he saw that. Yeah. But the fact that Voorhees, the eye of Sauron is kind of swung in the direction of this class of product, especially his eye, because his eye has been very prescient in many dimensions over the over the years. Yeah. I found that extremely interesting. So I think this, you get a little bit of luck here and you get the fire going with this new auction. It could be very big. So the auctions there's one auction up on your site, on the BAMK.fi site right now for the BAMK token. So what is the plan once you basically allow people, can I just go and list my runes, right? In the future?
You just search your rune up. You'll find all runes on Bitcoin, choose that, and then slide to however many blocks you want your auction to be. Yep. And then the auction would start. You might have to put in something to rune or NUSD. There might be a minimum amount you have to put in to start the auction. Yeah. But then you have a link that you can share to other people to put money into the auction. Nice. We may have some BAMK rewards for people pro rata based on the amount they participate in the auction to kind of make people want to use the auction. Over alternative means. But I do think about where I have historically sometimes been wrong is that I'm a bit too pure in the way I think about these products. And in the sense that, for me, it's got to work on chain. It's got to work all natively, atomically, blah, blah, blah. And the more commercial type of person like Shapeshift. It was not like Uniswap. It was not a decentralized exchange. It was just like a cover on top of Binance, and it was able to get there earlier than Uniswap, right? I remember Shapeshift being very good for that. So I think I'm trying to think about what is someone like Voorhees, what is he actually saying by saying he wants a Bitcoin stablecoin? I think what he means, and this might inform how we think about our roadmap. He's not aware of this perpetual yield. He's not aware of ruins necessarily. What he's really saying is Bitcoin is a pristine asset. The way Michael Saylor is thinking about Bitcoin as a pristine asset. Michael Saylor might know something about ruins, might know about on-chain economy, might know about decentralization, but what he's really saying is these corporate treasuries, these bond markets, these corporate bond markets, that has nothing to do with crypto. These guys are going to be thirsty for this pristine asset. So let me just put this on my balance sheet. I don't really care that the on-chain guys don't think this is pure. I don't care that the hardware wallet guys don't think you should be holding a stock that holds Bitcoin. He's just saying purely as a business, as a market opportunity, this is bringing Bitcoin in an accessible way for stockholders, bondholders, and all this Wall Street stuff, right? So that's what he's doing. So I'm thinking, just talking out loud, what Voorhees is really saying is, okay, cool. Now, I also think Bitcoin is a pristine asset. I'd rather have a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin than a random weird coin or Ethereum even backed stablecoin. Because if I'm minting stables off my ETH holdings, well, my ETH holdings has been underperforming Bitcoin for 3 years now. Okay?
Yeah.
So maybe what Voorhees is saying is he wants Bitcoin as collateral, but the stablecoin is actually running on Solana. The stablecoin is actually running on ETH, on Arbitrum, on all kinds of fast chains, so that the usage of the stablecoin is enjoyable. It's just like Tron. It's just like USDT. No need to think about runes and weird wallets like Xverse, Unisat. I'm sure that is not what Voorhees is thinking about. But then Bitcoin is the largest blockchain asset, the most pristine asset. And he's basically saying you could get a lot of hundreds of billions of dollars of stable coins minted by having collateral using Bitcoin than having collateral using, like, one of the reasons why DAI is not as big as Tether is probably because DAI needs ETH to be like put in there, and ETH is kind of small, whereas Tether is out there buying treasuries, and that's a very, very large market, right, in the traditional finance system. So Bitcoin is getting large enough where it's like you can have Bitcoin be the collateral. So I think what he's really saying, and why maybe when you tweet at him like NUSD is it, NUSD it, is not exactly what he's thinking, is he wants Bitcoin as reserves and stablecoin that runs on Bitcoin. That's cool. That if you guys are nerds and you guys know how to make them run on Bitcoin, that's cool. But also make this run on every other blockchain. I think that's what would be cool.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's how can we use Bitcoin as a reserve asset? Use it like gold, right?
Yeah.
So Bitcoin, and which increases the utility of the reserve asset, Bitcoin, and just crypto in general. So yeah, I think you may be right. I think he probably does know about runes and these other things. I don't think he's terribly interested in them. I don't think it's for whatever reason hasn't caught his fancy. But I'm pretty sure he's aware of them.
I think the way to do that would be the simplest way for us to do that would be to use the NUSD on Bitcoin as the reserve asset for other NUSDs on other chains.
Yeah.
So
yes,
because the Bitcoin NUSD part on Bitcoin, the original version of NUSD, that can be atomically swapped in and out. Yeah. So everyone else doesn't need to have atomic with Bitcoin because it's on different chains. You guys can just one-to-one with NUSD.
That makes sense. Yeah, because I don't think any of us, you and me probably don't. I don't know where you stand on this, but I don't trust Rep Bitcoin, WBTC on Ethereum. Right. I don't trust the backing of it. It scares me to sort of wrap my Bitcoin and put it on Ethereum. I don't know whether that Bitcoin reserve is actually going to get raided by something, be it government or be it a hacker or whatever. I just don't trust it. Whereas if you have raw Bitcoin and you atomically swap it for something else on another native chain, I feel a lot better about that.
Yeah. So there's something to crack there, and this time I'm very open to pivots. I'm very open to how to bring the best of both worlds. Like people want to be able to create an asset with their Bitcoin while keeping long exposure to Bitcoin. So it may be the case that they don't actually mind the stablecoin not having such a high yield. What they really want is to keep the Bitcoin backing that they think will go up 100% a year, 200% a year. So what they don't want is to sell the Bitcoin, lose the Bitcoin upside, and then I have 23% of yield on the stablecoin side. So it depends on whether you think you're targeting the stablecoin holder. Like, hey, I don't like USDT. I don't like USDT because the yield's too low. I like NUSD or Athena because the yield's higher. Is that the approach? Or are you targeting the Bitcoin holder who's like, hey, I don't need you to sell this to mint NUSD. You can keep the upside yourself. My gut instinct as I speak about this is that people probably want the Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, not the perpetual swap.
Yeah. No.
So if you see another pivot, that would be another pivot.
That'll be why. All right, Jack. Well, we're basically we just passed the hour mark. So
perfect.
Closing thoughts. Plug your stuff. Where can people find you? Where can people find BAMK? All that stuff.
Yeah, BAMK.fi. We've also got the domain BAMK.fund, BAMK.fund. It goes to the same website for now, but it gives us some artistic liberty to make this platform a lot more fun, a lot more popping for people to do. You'll see us on Twitter on BAMK.fi. And we're excited to see where the space is going just because today's a great day to be on the show. I think we're approaching $100,000 for Bitcoin, and it's a congratulations for how long you've been in the space. I know you've been tweeting celebration, right? So thanks for having me on such a special day. Yeah.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for coming. All right, everybody. This has been Hash Rate. I'm Mark Jeffrey. We'll see you all next time.